Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this closing press conference for the United Nations Ocean Conference 2022. My name is Francine Harrigan, and I've had the pleasure of being the United Nations spokesperson for the conference this week. We will hear statements today from the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Legal Affairs and UN Legal Counsel and Special Advisor to the Presidents of the conference, Miguel de Serpa Soares, followed by our conference co-hosts. With us now is the Portuguese Minister of Foreign Affairs, João Gomes Cravinho, and shortly we'll be joined by our co-host from Kenya. Under-Secretary General, the floor is yours.
So I thought we would go directly into the questions, but yeah, I'm very pleased to start. And the first thing I wanted to say is to express my satisfaction with the adoption of this declaration and with the fact that we have a muscle declaration, a very extensive program, and more than recognizing the dire state of oceans and the situation of real decline in ocean health, it also has a lot of policy directions and the indication of specific areas of intervention which should guide member states' action in the next years. I think that unexpectedly 2022 is becoming a super year for oceans, and this has started with two major breakthroughs: the negotiation in the plastic pollution that the decision was adopted in Nairobi earlier in the year, but also the fact that a file that was paralyzed in the World Trade Organization for over 20 years on the fishery subsidies was recently unblocked. And now this Lisbon conference, we will have the negotiations of the new treaty, the High Seas Treaty, in August in New York. So I think there is an incredibly momentum around oceans in the international agenda, and I'm leaving Lisbon in a very good mood after this conference.
Fantastic. Thank you, Under-Secretary General. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, I will speak in Portuguese. Take advantage of the excellent capacities of our interpreters. Quero dizer, em nome do governo português, que é com uma enorme satisfação que chegamos ao fim desta semana tremendamente intensa, mas com um elevado sentido de satisfação em relação ao trabalho que foi aqui feito. Este foi o maior evento de sempre dedicado aos oceanos. Foi o maior evento das Nações Unidas desde o início da pandemia. Tivemos 6.500 participantes, mais de 6.500, 26 chefes de Estado e Governo, 124 ministros, 17 responsáveis máximos por organizações das Nações Unidas, muitos outros participantes, representantes da sociedade civil e de outras instâncias. Adotámos uma declaração política que será conhecida como a Declaração de Lisboa, uma declaração política forte, com numerosas disposições, das quais eu gostaria de sublinhar algumas. O nexo clima-oceano é reconhecido de forma inequívoca e daqui resulta a importância de protegermos e de restaurarmos ecossistemas marinhos, que são fundamentais, como sumidouros e reservatórios de gases de efeito de estufa. Temos um compromisso para a tomada de decisões e soluções com base em ciência e inovação tecnológica, e isto significa muito mais trabalho na construção e na partilha de dados e de bases de dados e de informação. Temos uma ênfase na economia azul sustentável, ligada à proteção da biodiversidade e da valorização do capital natural marinho. Temos uma identificação clara da ideia de que não há transição verde se não houver simultaneamente uma transição azul. Temos um compromisso de 30% das áreas marinhas protegidas até 2030, um compromisso subscrito por mais de 100 Estados. Temos um forte impulso político para um ambicioso acordo sobre proteção de biodiversidade em áreas para além da jurisdição nacional, ou seja, o BBNJ, como é conhecido. Temos um compromisso claro para restaurar e manter as populações de pescas em níveis sustentáveis através de planos de gestão e de combate à pesca ilegal. Temos também um compromisso forte em matéria do ciclo completo da água, o ciclo hidrológico, ou seja, juntando o Objetivo de Desenvolvimento Sustentável 14, o dos oceanos, com o 6, sobre a água. E, por fim, temos uma aposta no reforço das parcerias, sobretudo nas parcerias público-privadas. Para além dos elementos que constam da Declaração de Lisboa, muitas delegações e muitos participantes aproveitaram a conferência para anunciar novos compromissos. Temos mais de 2.000 compromissos que foram inscritos na plataforma eletrónica que foi criada para este efeito. E destes 2.000 compromissos, 674 são compromissos quantificáveis financeiramente. Isso creio que vale a pena para os jornalistas passarem algum tempo a olhar para essa plataforma eletrónica. Temos um aumento muito significativo das áreas marinhas protegidas. Muitos, incluindo Portugal, anunciaram a criação recente ou a criação no futuro próximo de novas áreas protegidas. Avançou-se num acordo global para combater o flagelo que são os plásticos no mar. A coligação de alta ambição para o acordo BBNJ também cresceu e cresceu, portanto, o empenho e o entusiasmo em torno de um acordo, esperemos em breve. Em termos de financiamento, temos compromissos na ordem dos 10 mil milhões de euros. 7 mil milhões vindos da União Europeia. O Banco de Desenvolvimento da América Latina tem um compromisso de 1,2 mil milhões. A Fundação da Terra do Bezos investe 1.000 milhões até 2030. O Banco Europeu de Investimento anunciou apoios a projetos na ordem de 250 milhões de euros. A Austrália comprometeu-se a investir 1.100 milhões de euros na preservação da Grande Barreira de Coral durante os próximos 10 anos. E outras entidades privadas anunciaram contributos de 17 milhões de euros para o Fundo Global para as barreiras de corais. A EDP, Eletricidade de Portugal, anunciou que vai investir 1.250 milhões de euros em projetos de energias renováveis offshore no mar, portanto, até 2025. E temos um forte sentido de continuidade, ou seja, Lisboa representa, acreditamos, um marco muitíssimo importante, mas é um marco num processo que continua. 2 elementos sobre a continuidade, conforme anunciado no discurso do Primeiro-Ministro português, em 2023 voltaremos a ter em Portugal um fórum para a economia azul sustentável, um fórum de investimentos, e a terceira conferência das Nações Unidas sobre os oceanos será assumida por Costa Rica e pela França nos anos subsequentes, com uma conferência preparatória em 2024 na Costa Rica e a conferência plena em França em 2025. Muito obrigado.
Thank you. I see we're now joined by the Honourable Kereiko Tibiko, Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry. Would you like to make remarks to the floor, or we can move to questions?
Okay, right, yes. Gentlemen and ladies for the state, on behalf of Kenya, which is, as you know, the co-host with Portugal, it's quite honored to have been part of this process and runs several years. We can only describe this as a resounding success. And I think all of us are with one mind, that there cannot be a healthy planet unless there is healthy oceans. The ocean is the life support mechanism for all of us. You know the figures. 50% or more of the oxygen that we rely on comes from the oceans. 25-30% of what we, in terms of carbon sequestration, by the oceans, and 90% of the, and you know it. besides maintaining the livelihoods of 3 billion plus people. And so the ocean is really the support system of all of us. But we've been taking the ocean for granted. We have overburdened it, we've polluted it, and so there is urgent action. And this really, I think the resolution today is that action has to be taken. It's been more than enough words and statements of intent. Now time for action starts, and I think the declaration and the commitments that have been made by the leaders, it's very clear. Time for action now. And finally, the interlinkages between a healthy ocean and the other important aspect of climate change, and also the biodiversity conservation. So linking these processes with the ongoing processes in COP27 in Africa, Egypt, and also COP15 of the CBD in Montreal, Canada. It's very, very critical so that we have a holistic. For the developing countries, the issue about technology, capacity, and also training in terms of the disparities. So there is need for sufficient support mechanism for developing countries. That really is what I would want to say, unless there are specific questions directed to Kenya. I thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor to questions from media as time permits. Please state your name and media organization before asking your question. Thank you. I'll start at the front here, and then I'll move to the middle row. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you. My name is João. I'm from Bangladesh, and my media is Today's World News 24 and South Asian Times. I have just 3 short questions to you. Just whether any funds has been created to save the common oceans through this UN Oceans Conference. If any fund has been formed, when will be released, and which countries will be given the priority to give this fund? My second question is, what is the big concern of the ocean now, and what we learned from this UN Oceans Conference? My third question is, what is the outcomes of the 5-day-long the Oceans Conference? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I can ask Excellency to my far left if he has response to that, and maybe we'll move down our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I'm not sure whether a specific fund. There was, of course, a recommendation, subject to what my colleagues who have been the rapporteurs, but there was a recommendation on the need to have a dedicated fund for ocean action. I'm not clear about what form and nature, but at least there is that proposal and recommendation. Yes. And secondly, as you asked the issue about what the greatest concerns. I think the greatest concerns are threefold. One is the issue of marine litter pollution, and particularly plastics. As you know, 90% of the marine litter is plastics. And evidence is that by 2050 we'll have more plastics in the oceans than fish. You can only imagine how that is. And so in Nairobi and UNEA 5.2, there was a resolution to have a legally binding global treaty on plastics, and that is one of the trends of the tracks that we now are following, and very, very, very important. The other issue, of course, is the question about concluding the treaty, the negotiations on the BB&J, that's biodiversity on areas beyond national jurisdictions. You have a huge area. Again, I don't 2/3 or more than that of the entire oceans, which belongs to all, but belongs to none. And so concluding that treaty, which is, we understand by August, hopefully it will be concluded. And finally, the whole issue about climate and oceans, the issues of acidification, deoxygenation, and ocean warming. That really is a major concern, and there is an alliance, international alliance on combating acidifications and so on and so forth. So there are quite fundamental recommendations that have been adopted and encapsulated in the declaration.
If I may, I would just add to the words of my colleague from Kenya to say that in terms of financial commitments, there were very many numerous commitments, some of which by public entities, other by private entities, and there is a electronic platform which has some of those commitments, or it has many of those commitments there, and that can be consulted. The outcomes, I would say, on the one hand, you have very strong political mobilization, which is essential to carry us over the finishing line in some of the international agreements that are currently being negotiated, namely BBNJ in the short run, and also the one on plastics, and the one, of course, on biodiversity towards the end of the year. So this political mobilization is an extremely important outcome. But also there were very, very many commitments, the financial ones, and many that are not financially quantifiable, which can be found in the electronic platform. So I think that we've had a very strong impulse here towards the generation of political consciousness about the importance of action regarding the oceans, and I hope that when we look back some years in the future, that we'll see this moment as being a mark in the process of humans taking responsibility for the planet, which, if it doesn't occur, will be devastating for all of us.
Thank you. Miguel, anything to add?
Well, the advantage of speaking last is that there's not much left to be said. But you know, the text of the declaration is public, and the particular situation of developing states, and in specific small island developing states, there is an entire point about this, recognizing what specific challenges need to be addressed, and under the philosophy that you don't have one size fits all, and you have to address the specific issues that states in similar conditions have. And because you have raised funding and financing, there are specific mentions on the work that needs to be addressed on public-private partnerships and bankability and feasibility of projects, etc., etc. It's point 14, D and E, and so on. Now, this doesn't solve all the issues. This has to be broken down in specific projects. The minister mentioned the commitments, the voluntary commitments that have to be made. And it's for oceans also the question of financing is a parallel issue to the financing of in climate change, how to transition to greener economies and how to address the costs of such transition. But that discussion is taking place at the international level, and the specific situation of developing countries is fully recognized in the work of international organizations and of the international community. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We had a question in the middle of the room.
Posso fazer em português, or should I ask in English?
As you wish.
Okay. O Sr. Ministro dos Negócios Estrangeiros falou em 10 mil milhões de euros de investimentos que foram abordados nesta conferência. Consegue dizer-me a percentagem que corresponde a medidas para a conservação dos oceanos e a percentagem que corresponde a negócios sustentáveis, portanto, à Blue Economy, à Blue Sustainable Economy, mas que tenha a ver só com energias, com pescas ou com outro tipo de atividades?
Muito obrigado. Bom, nós estamos numa fase ainda de contabilização. Eu penso que 10 mil milhões é aquilo que podemos dizer agora. Eu penso que talvez daqui a alguns dias já haja um número mais exato, que nunca será abaixo, mas poderá ser acima. Por outro lado, eu gostaria de algum modo recusar a premissa da pergunta. porque a ideia da economia azul sustentável é precisamente investimento que ultrapasse, que supere uma dicotomia entre aquilo que dá lucro e aquilo que é bom para o planeta ou os oceanos. A ideia aqui, nesta contabilização que estamos a fazer, e que foi muito o objeto de trabalho do Fórum para o Investimento na Economia Azul Sustentável, é precisamente a ideia de geração de negócios, alguns mais já utilizando tecnologia existente, outros inovando, mas que sejam todos, correspondam todos a esse objetivo duplo de gerar lucros, porque se não for o caso não temos empresas envolvidas e de ter também sustentabilidade no cerne das operações. Dito isso, há também investimentos feitos por parte de entidades a fundo perdido. Nomeadamente, a União Europeia fez anúncios bastante significativos e outros países, como é o caso da Austrália, que eu referi, e que está a fazer um grande investimento na proteção das barreiras de corais. E, portanto, essa distinção eu não a consigo fazer. Se for projeto por projeto no quadro desses anúncios todos, eu acredito que também em muitos casos seja difícil distinguir como classificar, porque o objetivo é mesmo que correspondam a diversos objetivos.
Thank you. Let me ask our other speakers if there are any additional comments for that question.
Just finished now.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? I see one at the back, and I think this may be our last question. Thank you.
Olá, Amanda Lima, para a revista Época do Grupo Globo. A minha pergunta para o senhor ministro citou há pouco que em 2023 será realizado mais um Fórum de Economia Sustentável em Portugal. Gostaria de perguntar se será o governo que vai organizar esse evento ou alguma entidade privada, e também se há expectativa de que sejam atraídos mais recursos, assim como aconteceu já na terça-feira no evento realizado em Cascais. Obrigada.
Sim, o governo português vai assumir essa responsabilidade. Posso confessar que, quando falámos disso há dias, as entidades que organizaram esta conferência disseram: ok, mas não é comigo, porque já estão exaustas, mas eu acredito que para a semana já vão estar com outro entusiasmo. Não, vamos organizar, obviamente, com múltiplos parceiros, porque um fórum desta natureza, para ter sucesso, precisa de ter parceiros públicos e parceiros privados, parceiros de Portugal, mas também de muitos outros países, e sim, não sei ainda qual será a localização, se vamos voltar a repetir o local ou se voltaremos aqui para Lisboa, mas será em Portugal em 23.
Thank you. Before we close, can I ask our panel if there are any closing remarks you would like to make? Otherwise, we can... Sure, we'll start with the Minister. Thank you.
On my side, I just want to say what a great pleasure it was to work with Kenya over various years. This was not something that we did just a few days ago. And in the United Nations context, we have had the support of many countries. In particular, Grenada and Denmark were very effective in generating a convergence around the political declaration. And so we feel that it has been an extremely intense experience for us, but one in which we had enormous level of support from around the world, particularly from Kenya and, of course, from the United Nations Secretariat.
Thank you. Any comments? Otherwise, I'll move.
It's been great working with Portugal to make this a success. They've been such a fantastic co-host. We look forward to continuing working together on this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, and maybe the last word, Miguel, if you have one, and then we'll close.
I was going also to thank Portugal and Kenya. Now I'm hesitating, so because this sounds too much patting in the back. But no, I had actually one last comment, which is this is not only a process for national governments and public authorities. It has to be much broader, and I think you all have seen that a little bit during this week with the very strong presence of civil society, because I mean, what we have to do from now on has to involve all different sectors of society: universities, scientists, organizations of youth, local authorities. It's a much broader debate. And in that debate, also the press. So thank you for having talked about oceans so much during this week. That it's very, very important to engage the general public and to pass this message how important this is, how important this fight is. So you were very present, and I want to thank the press for being so present throughout this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Under Secretary General, and thank you to our distinguished speakers and for everyone joining us. That ends today's press conference and also the UN Ocean Conference 2022. Thank you.